If you haven't heard about the USS Gerald R. Ford battleship that has left China and Russia in shock, get blown away. This gigantic ship is the first of its kind as the US plans to build 10 more. The end of the 20th century was a time of supreme American confidence and rapid innovation. The Cold War ended, and the Pentagon saw an opportunity to capitalize on peacetime with preparations for future conflicts. As a result, America launched a revolution in military technology, and this technology will be our focus in this video. However, before we go into the details, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Military Technology Updates channel. Symbol of power. Expectations are high, and American rivals in terms of military might, like Russia and China, are still in shock as the U.S. Navy deploys the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier. The supercarrier's propulsion and nuclear reactor system would triple the electrical power of its predecessor, the Nimitz-class carriers. However, if you think that this battleship is overhyped, you're mistaken. Its great gun elevators have the capacity to move 2,000 pounds of ammunition at speeds of 150 feet per minute. This is also an improvement to the Nimitz's 100 feet per minute speed. The warship's new launch and recovery system is capable of handling 270 planes in a single day. From top to bottom, the innovations on this ship are designed to save crew, time, and cost. There's no doubt that this aircraft carrier would revolutionize how the U.S. Navy would build and use its supercarriers. This also applies to other countries that would want to attempt to build something even bigger. Undoubtedly, the Ford would symbolize American superiority as it projects power to American adversaries. A defense analyst named Eric Wertheim stated that America was so far ahead of other nations in this aspect that they could afford to pause and try new, unproven innovations strategically. The analyst said this regarding the mentality of the US after the Cold War and the belief that the rest of the world was about 20 years behind. Are there any problems with the aircraft carrier? After taking 2 decades and tons of dollars, the sheer audacity of the USS Gerald Ford seemed to spell its doom. Although it's expected to save the American military $4 billion in years, this supercarrier has cost billions more than initial estimates. The ship was initially supposed to deploy back in 2018. However, deployment had to be postponed until late 2024. In fact, when the Ford carriers arrived at the Navy after construction, it was already 2 years behind schedule. Not only that, but there was still lots of work remaining on thousands of items. John McCain, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, disclosed in 2015 that the bundling of multiple technologies into the Ford was the sin that damaged the program. The issues were undeniable, as even the Navy's senior officer acknowledged the carrier's problems. These issues included 23 new technologies that increased the risk of timely delivery and cost. At this, many come to the conclusion that the designers shouldn't be introducing more than 1 or 2 new technologies on such a complex platform. The fact is that warships are still the only weapon in which the prototype goes to sea. Hence, it was necessary to cut down on new technology. Meanwhile, America's adversaries have added urgency to Ford's problems, solving with various nations working on their own battleships. However, despite the setbacks and backlash, the USS Gerald Ford shows signs that it can complete its mission. Its key technologies are coming to life. A key feature in the design. A prominent but problematic feature of the warship is its powerful Advanced Arresting Gear, aka AAG. Before the advent of the Gerald Ford carriers, U.S. carriers used a hydraulic arresting system to slow and halt their planes from landing. However, the AAG uses an electric motor along with a water tornado to accommodate a wider range of aircraft. Production and engineering of the AAG began in 2005, with 2009 as the target completion date. Nonetheless, the 2016 Pentagon Inspector General report noted that the development testing for the technology would continue through 2018. This was because the system hadn't proven its capacity to test in the Ford. Also, the technology's power conditioning system failed several tests before 2009 and 2012. As a result, both its cable damper and inverter system needed to be redesigned. Such problems skyrocketed the development cost of the AAG from over $140 million to more than $1 billion. The Commission. In 2017, when the Navy commissioned the USS Gerald Ford, none of its elevators were fully operational. When it began its post-delivery trial and testing back in 2019, just 4 of its lifts were operational. While this might seem like a lot, the main issue with the supercarrier was actually software-related. Certain industrial workers began working on repairs with the renewed urgency to incorporate operable elevators. This was done while the Ford was at sea rather than waiting until it was docked. For years, engineers and U.S. military personnel worked on the battleship, which finally paid off. The last gun elevators got delivered to the Ford crew late last year. While testing was going on in 2020, one day during 8.5 hours of daytime flight operations, the USS Gerald Ford managed 175 arrest landings, with over 160 expected during a 12-hour flight day. As for the deployment schedule, the Ford class was expected to deploy in a different climate than what the military leaders anticipated 2 decades earlier. Then, as the U.S. military focused on counterinsurgency efforts in the Middle East, Russia had been active in the Arctic. As for China, they had begun aggressive expansion with their naval capabilities. China's DF-21D carrier killer missile had been said to possess a range of about 2,485 miles. Now, that wasn't good news for the U.S. military. Deployment of this great ship. Since the deployment of the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier seems increasingly pressurized, many still regard it highly. Many individuals see the ship as the pinnacle of aircraft carrier technology. Eric Wertheim is among such people, and he revealed that he was confident the Ford class would be a great ship. He went further to acknowledge that the ship had taken longer and was more expensive, but that the remaining issues would be fixed. He advised that people should not see the Ford class as a failure, but as a challenge to be better when next an opportunity presents itself. Interestingly, the next opportunity came in no time. The Ford's 3 potential successors, USS Enterprise, USS John F. Kennedy, and USS Doris Miller, are taking shape at Newport News Shipbuilding. The Kennedy is expected to arrive first around 2024, while the Miller will hopefully come in last by 2032. However, the USS Gerald Ford soon started showing its skills at sea. The series of crash tests that were performed seemed to prove that building a modern aircraft carrier while accessing the capacity of modern adversaries is possible. For this, more individuals are starting to believe that the world's newest and most advanced warship would operate for a half a century. It's possible that there are improvements to be done for subsequent supercarriers, but there's no doubt that the USS Gerald Ford is the future right now. The Navy is set to deploy the USS Gerald R. Ford 4 years after the original maiden deployment date of 2018. The delays were many, and there were several reliability issues with multiple new technologies. However, the $13 billion lead ship will soon be available for Army task assignment. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Military Technology Updates. Alright soldier, let's get back to the video. A battle-ready battleship. Taking out the Ford class with its capabilities will generally improve the number of carriers and strike groups available for use. The ship's adaptability is also expected to offer Navy personnel more flexibility. Originally, the Gerald Ford carrier class was to increase the rate of sortie generation by 30%. This was to be done in part by having elevators moving artillery up and about the rails using magnetic motors. The supercarrier's EMALS, electromagnetic aircraft launch system, also has the capacity to launch aircraft faster than the steam catapult system featured on the Nimitz-class carriers. This new system would require less crew than the Nimitz. The forward arresting gear would replace the high-maintenance Mark 7 hydraulic arresting gear. This forward arresting gear would catch fixed-wing aircrafts as they land on the carrier. Deployment to the detriment of U.S. adversaries. The USS Gerald Ford supercarrier has faced its fair share of problems. This includes issues with the advanced weapons elevators, which perform very crucial tasks. They carry ordnance to the flight deck and are vital to the ship's capacity to increase the sortie spawn rate. Reports suggest that the U.S. Navy is on track to have all 11 elevators ready by the time the current maintenance phase is done. The Navy finished the carrier's summer crash test events without any huge fires or flooding. Instead, during crash tests, the American Navy detonated 40,000-pound ordnance into the water near the hull to test both the ship's systems. The result? They did well. There's no overemphasizing the fact that the Ford is designed with more of a modular mindset. Thus, it's easier to flex and adapt as new teams are brought on board. People working on the ship are starting to see what the new air wing composition will look like. They'll also get to see new technologies and how they can be easily incorporated into the Ford. Getting back to the operational state as quickly as possible is also critical. Inasmuch as many of the American adversaries are starting to catch up and build their own supercarriers and missiles, the USS Gerald Ford is still shoulders above them. Besides the technologies that have caused more problems than they solved, the adaptability of the carrier is outstanding. This ship is expected to last for about 50 years, and with technology running amok, one could only imagine what the new age would look like in another 5 to 10 years. Therefore, if this battleship is to survive until then, it'll need to possess fluidity like water, because you don't need to look too far back to understand that 50 years from now will bring a lot of changes to what is considered modern warfare. But will a ship costing $13 billion be able to survive that long? Does it have the capacity to handle technologies that haven't been built yet? The likes of Russia are constantly working on building bigger and better weapons to counter whatever the US has. The biggest supercarrier from Russia is known as the Admiral Kuznetsov. It was first built in 1982 but was upgraded in 2018. For all the capabilities this ship offers, it remains a far cry from the USS Gerald Ford. It's behind in terms of speed and size, which explains why it costs $1 billion. The USS Gerald Ford is 13 times more. However, it should be noted that Russia is working on refitting its aircraft carrier. As for China, they're also working on constructing a new aircraft carrier. The new one is expected to be a nuclear-powered carrier. The current one is known as the Shandong, which was launched back in 2017. For such a young ship, it's the country's first domestically built supercarrier, but then it falls way below the weight of the USS Gerald Ford ship. Hence, it's understandable that both Russia and China are shocked at the deployment of this battleship. If you enjoy watching videos like this, leave a like and subscribe to military technology updates. That way, you don't miss out on our next videos. Alright, take care.